Hello everyone, welcome to Options with Doug, streaming live on Monday and Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Bookmap Discord and the Bookmap YouTube channel. And I hope everyone had a great Christmas and we're looking forward to New Year's and starting a new year of trading. Before I get started, I need to go through the disclosures. General disclosure, all Bookmap Limited materials, information, and presentations are for educational purposes only and should not be considered specific investment advice nor recommendations. Risk disclosure, trading futures, equities, and options involves substantial risk of loss. It is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Here's my contact information. The best way to get in touch with me is through Discord. My name on Discord is Doug P. Also in Bookmap Discord, there's an Options-Jug chat channel. You can post questions, comments, and content related to the topics of my presentation and the topics of the channel that I'll go through in just a moment. I'm also on X. My name there is @DougPless. I do have several deals to announce. Still ongoing through the end of this year. First of all, the Bookmap Black Friday sale that is 50% off Global Plus quarterly, plus 50% off data for 3 months, and that ends on Wednesday, December 31st. Also, there's the Bookmap Cyber Monday deal. That's 60% off Global Plus monthly, plus 1 month of data, and that also ends at the end of the week, end of the year on Wednesday. Then there's the Bookmap add-on deals, 50% off add-ons. Again, good through the end of the year, Wednesday. Also, the Blue Jacket competition for December. You need to post your setup, show what add-ons you're using for a chance to win a Blue Jacket and get a refund for your add-ons. You just need to use the hashtag Free Blue Jacket. And then finally, here's a new deal. This is the New Year sale. This is 30% off Global Plus Lifetime. Data is not included, and that is good through Thursday, January 1st. Again, that's the New Year sale. So those are all the sales. Previous sales ending on Wednesday, and then the New Year sale ending on January 1st. All right, let's move on. Here are the key tenets to my approach to trading. I believe that options trades and market maker hedging activity are key drivers of price in many stocks and futures. That certainly applies to the large cap tech stocks like the Magnificent Seven stocks, as well as the equity index futures like the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100. And for the S&P 500, SPX is the underlying index. SPY is the ETF version of that index, and the S futures contract is a derivative of SPX. And when traders buy and sell puts and calls in SPX and SPY, market makers take the opposite side of those trades and they hedge their delta exposure with the S futures. And for the NASDAQ 100, NDX is the underlying index, QQQ is the much more liquid ETF version of that index, and the NQ futures contract is a derivative of NDX. And just like the S&P 500, when traders buy and sell puts and calls in NDX and QQQ, market makers take the opposite side of those trades and they hedge their delta exposure with NQ futures. The focus of my presentation today and the focus of the Options-Jug chat channel is options order flow, the impact of options markets on stocks and futures, and the influence of market maker hedging flow on price action. I have a two-step process for trading, and the first is planning, and I use positional analysis. I'll look at how traders and market makers are positioned in the options market and how those positions change from day to day to develop a thesis regarding the expected trading range and volatility for the day as well as their directional bias. And the second step in my process is execution. I'll look at real-time order flow in Bookmap and real-time market maker hedging flow in Spotgamma Hero to confirm my thesis and for setups. And when I talk about setups today, I will be focusing on an underlying asset. Setups in that asset can be taken with futures contracts, shares of stock, or options, depending on the asset as well as the way you like to trade. Questions and comments are welcome, and I will be watching both the Options-Doug chat channel as well as the chat and YouTube for your questions and comments. Please feel free to post. I'll do my best to answer your questions. Here's my agenda for today, Monday, December 29th. First of all, I want to go over news items, economic data, and events. There are just a couple coming up this week. Then I'll go through my positional analysis. Then I'll review some setups earlier today. Then I'll take a look at the live market. And when I get to the live market, if anyone has any stocks they want me to take a look at, please let me know, and I'll be glad to do that. All right, let's get started with news items. Again, just a couple of things. So let's go ahead and take a look at the S&P 500 ES futures and Bookmap while we're talking about this. So the only two data releases, data items, first of all, on Tuesday, the FOMC minutes come out a day early at 2 p.m. That's due to the Thursday holiday. So FOMC minutes, 2 p.m. on Tuesday. And then jobless claims come out at 8:30 a.m. on Wednesday, again a day early, due to the holiday, New Year's holiday on Thursday. And then normally the jobs report would come out the first Friday of the month, and the jobs report for December will be delayed a week. So the December jobs report will come out a week from Friday on January 9th. All right, so that's news items. All right, so let's move on to positional analysis now. Let's start with the S&P 500. Let me point out a couple key levels in play. First of all, this is the SPY 689 put wall volatility trigger zero gamma level. And that in overnight hours, right around 3 a.m., briefly acted as support. Then after that, acted as resistance multiple times. And this was your entry point for a short just after the cash open, right around 9:37. And looks like about a fourth or fifth test of that 689 put wall level. Then the S&P 500 found support at the SPX 6895 volatility trigger until finally breaking lower. So support, and then finally it broke lower down to the SPY 686 level, and then now is rallying back above the ES upper daily expected move, and also the SPX 6900 level. All right, so before I spend more time on this chart, let's step back, take a look at our higher time frame. I'm going to go to the underlying index, that's SPX. This is a 1 year, 1 day chart in Thinkorswim. And the big rally began early in April, first week in April. And there have been several sharp pullbacks. That is the October 10th tariff tantrum, and then the reaction to NVIDIA earnings, then another smaller pullback, and now SPX is trading at new highs last week. All right, so let's look now at a 30-day 1 hour chart. So we'll look at a little bit shorter time frame. This is the reaction to NVIDIA earnings, day after NVIDIA earnings. And then after, SPX rallied and then consolidated somewhere between 6,800 and 6,900. There's the final shakeout week before last, and then SPX moves straight up to 69.45 and finding a resistance just below 69.50. All right, so that brings us to today. And again, SPX generally finding support at the volatility trigger at 68.95. I'm going to zoom in on this just a little bit here. So let's focus on the levels now. So we'll start with the expected moves. Dashed purple lines are showing the lower and upper weekly expected move. This is based on the options market, based on the closing price for SPX from last Friday. Those levels remain in place for the entire week. Then the dashed blue lines are showing the lower and upper daily expected move. Those levels do change every day. And note SPX did trade down below the lower daily expected move today. And now it looks like it is just right around that level. Just above the lower daily expected move. All right, so those are the expected moves. And I do post expected moves for SPX, ES, and NQ every day before a trading day in the Options Doug chat channel and Discord. All right, so those are the expected moves. Let's take a look at the Spotgamma levels now. These are based on gamma-weighted open interest. They're provided to Spotgamma subscribers on a variety of trading platforms. Again, this is Thinkorswim, a 30-day, 1-hour chart. I'm going to point out the key daily levels. First of all, the put wall is at 6,700. That's a strike where large net negative gamma that can be expected to act as support. Next level up is the volatility trigger that I mentioned before at 68.95. That's Spotgamma's proprietary volatility and gamma flip level. Below that level, market makers' position on the gamma curve is negative. In a negative gamma environment, market makers have to trade with price to hedge their delta exposure. That tends to enhance or increase volatility. Above that level, market makers' position on the gamma curve is positive. In a positive gamma environment, market makers have to trade against price to hedge their delta exposure. That tends to subdue or decrease volatility. And that's just based on Spotgamma's older total open interest model. We'll take a look at gamma based on their newer synthetic open interest model in just a couple of minutes. All right, then finally, 7,000 is the call wall and absolute gamma strike. So the call wall is a strike where large net positive gamma, it can be expected to act as resistance. And the absolute gamma strike is the strike with large absolute positive and negative gamma. So that's where most of the gamma-weighted open interest is concentrated. All right, so those are the key daily levels. And of course, there are other levels in play, combo levels and other large gamma levels. But those are the key levels. And note there were no changes from last Friday in the levels, no shifts in levels. And for SPY, the call wall did shift higher. So that was the only shift in SPX level, in the S&P 500 levels. Call wall for SPY shifted higher to 700. All right, let's wrap up our view of SPX with a 1-minute chart. So you can see the rally up to 69.45. That was last Friday, then consolidation. After that, all right, let's zoom in. So today, a gap down, then a quick move higher right after the open, setting up a very good short at that SPY 689 volatility trigger put wall level. More about that in just a minute. Nice downtrend. And then finally, SPX has broken the downtrend right around 12:45, 1 p.m. Eastern, and trading just above the upper daily expected move. And then there's the breakdown below the 68.95 volatility trigger. All right, let's take a quick look at SPY. Then we'll get back to Bookmap. So SPY, the other underlying index. Zoom in on this. So there you see the pre-market resistance shown on the shaded portion, then the dark portion showing regular trading hours. One last test of that 689 level, and then a move down to round number level 686. All right, back to Bookmap now. All right, so I have the SPY and SPX levels on this chart. Again, SPY 689 level, key resistance, and entry point for a short just after the open, and then support at 68.95 volatility trigger. And that was also your target, primary target for your short this morning. Again, we'll talk about setups in just a couple of minutes. All right, so those are levels in play. And note there's a difference in price between ES and SPX, and today it is right around 48 points. So the ES to SPX offset is 48 points. So I'm showing SPX 6,900 at ES 69.48. And I do post the index relationships that I use every day in the Options-Jug chat channel and Bookmap Discord. And that includes the ES to SPY ratio, NQ to QQQ ratio, and also the ES to SPX offset, and the NQ to NDX offset as well, which is right around 210 or 215 today. All right, so we'll talk about setups in just a couple of minutes again. Let's take a quick look at NASDAQ. Go to the NQ futures of Bookmap, and we'll take a look at the underlying index components. We'll start with QQQ, then we'll get back to the NQ chart, just so we can isolate the index levels in play. So you can see the downtrend began overnight. Let's zoom in on regular trading hours. And pretty wide swings this morning, a lot of chop from 619 to above the zero gamma level at 622, and then back and forth until QQQ settled down right around 10:45 or 11. Right now trading just above its volatility trigger at 620. All right, so really the key level support so far today is the round number level, 619. Let's take a look at NDX now. We'll zoom in on this. So a couple levels in play. Just after the open, the 25,600 large gamma 4 level acting as resistance. And then this 25,500 large gamma 2 level has been acting as resistance. Price did break above that briefly, now back down below. So we'll keep an eye on that. All right, so let's go back to Bookmap now. Go to the NQ chart. So there's that NDX 25,600 large gamma 4 level acting as resistance, good entry point for a short. And then the QQQ 619 level acting as support. Price did break down a little bit lower, but now back above that level. And trading right around the 620 volatility trigger. All right, so that's NASDAQ. Any questions so far? Again, we'll take a look at setups in just a couple of minutes. So let's wrap up our positional analysis by taking a look at Gamma. This is the Spotgamma trace gamma heat map. So this is available to Spotgamma subscribers. So what this is showing is gamma for SPX, market maker gamma position. Red shading indicates negative gamma. And negative gamma, remember again, we're looking for higher volatility. So you can equate this with volatility. Red shading, negative gamma, looking for higher volatility, faster movement. And then blue shading indicates positive gamma. And in positive gamma, we're looking for lower volatility. All right, and there are no clear targets, large positive gamma targets right now. Zoom in one click. All right, so you can see SPX trading up above at 68.95. It's called hedge wall there, but it's the volatility trigger for an index. And then there is some blue positive gamma down below. All right, back to on to setups now. I'm going to start with the S&P 500. And as always, I'm going to start by taking a look at what options traders have been doing today. This is the Spotgamma hero signal. Hero stands for hedging impact real-time options. So the levels that we've taken a look at, the positional analysis, that is based on levels that change once a day overnight. They're based on open interest, which is updated once a day, sometime overnight. Then trace the gamma heat map, that's updated every 10 minutes. And now we're moving on to real-time data. So we're looking at what options traders are doing and how market makers are reacting with hedging. Now I'm talking about options market makers. So again, this is the hero signal. It's available to Spotgamma subscribers. The white line shows price for SPX. And the purple line is the hero signal, showing options trades and market maker hedging activity for the S&P 500 index components. We've already taken a look at a couple of those. That is SPX and SPY. This also includes ES and XSP. And a rising hero signal indicates positive delta trades. So rising hero signal indicates traders are taking positive delta options positions. They are buying calls and or selling puts. And market makers take the opposite side of those trades, and they hedge their delta exposure by buying ES futures. And a falling hero signal indicates traders are taking negative delta options positions. They're buying puts and or selling calls. Again, market makers take the opposite side of those trades, and they have to sell ES futures to hedge their delta exposure. All right, let's zoom in on this. By the way, this is the older version of Hero, and I just find this a little bit easier to use in a presentation where I'm jumping from one instrument to the next pretty quickly. It seems to be a little more stable on that in that situation. All right, so this morning there was a brief bullish opening drive and then a reversal in the hero signal. So traders were taking positive delta positions, and right around 9:37 they switched, started taking negative delta positions, and the S&P 500 reversed again at that SPY 689 put wall volatility trigger, zero gamma level. All right, so that's the first setup. And then a long setup right around 10:15 as the hero signal again shifted, in this case from negative delta to positive delta. And in this case, there was a flow alert signaling significant options activity, a potential reversal in hedging flow from negative delta to positive delta. And that's exactly what happened. All right, so let's go take a look at Bookmap. at these two setups this morning. So zoom in, actually zoom in a little bit more. Whoops. All right, so this is the cash open right here, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. So ES was already moving higher, finding support at the SPX 68.95 volatility trigger just after 9:15. Then at 9:30, a sharp move higher. I'm going to bump up the volume dots just a little bit here. A little bit of chop right at the open, but aggressive buyers came in. You can see the rising cumulative volume delta there. That is the magenta line. Also, buy stop orders helped to fuel that move higher, shown by the rising yellow line. And then some large traders came in a little bit late with iceberg orders. Those are buy iceberg orders. That's shown by the light blue line there. A little bit late, price had really already started to reverse as traders were taking negative delta options positions. And S&P 500, again, finding a resistance at this level that had acted as resistance multiple times before the cash open. And pretty much a straight move down toward the primary target at 68.95 volatility trigger. And note the buyers. The heat map shows the limit orders, history of limit orders in the order book. And you can see the limit buy orders clustered right around the 68.95 volatility trigger. And those are ES orders. And then price reversed higher as traders started taking positive delta options positions. So those are the two setups in ES this morning. A short, then a long. Now it looks like ES is finding a resistance at VWAP. That's that light blue line. And the VWAP was resistance before. All right, so let's go see what options traders are doing. So looking at this chart, we already know that we saw this reversal in hedging flow. That's right around 138. And there's one other hero signal that we can take a look at for the S&P 500. And that is the S&P equity signal. So we looked at the index signal showing the options trades and market maker hedging activity in the S&P 500 index components. And what this chart is showing is the options trades and market maker hedging activity for all 500 stocks in the S&P 500 index. And you really want to take a look at both to make an informed decision about trading. So what this is showing is traders were taking negative delta options positions from the open. So we already know the index signal reversed right around 937, and the equity signal was already moving lower, setting up a nice divergent short. Hero signal moving lower, price moving higher, then price reverses in line with the hero signal there, setting up again a nice divergent short. So first confirmation, the index signal, that reversal 937. Second on the equities, the divergent signal, and then a level that acted as resistance as expected. and also a level that acted as support, the 68.95. Volatility trigger, that was the target for the short, and also a support level for the reversal higher. All right, any questions about the S&P 500? ES SPX. So let's go back to Bookmap. All right, so you could play this any number of ways with, of course, futures contracts here in Bookmap, ES futures, or you could take trades in SPX or SPY options. I prefer spreads, and then also SPY shares. So any number of ways to take that trade, take the trades. Well, let's take a look at NASDAQ. All right, NASDAQ, also key levels of support and resistance that I talked about before. Let's take a look at Hero now. So let's go to the NASDAQ index signal. So just like the S&P 500, there are two hero signals that we can take a look at. First is the index signal, showing options trades and market maker hedging activity for the NASDAQ index components. We've already taken a look at those. That is QQQ and NDX. So this chart is showing the white line is price for NDX, and the purple signal is the index hero signal. And that is showing same reversal right around 938, and the same reversal again right around 1015 for a just a counter move higher. All right, so that is the NASDAQ index signal. Again, setting up a nice short, then a reversal higher. Looking at these two trades here. All right, there's another hero signal that we can take a look at for the NASDAQ, and that is the MAG 7 signal. This is showing options trades and market maker hedging activity for the stocks known as the Magnificent Seven: Apple, Amazon, Google, Meta, Microsoft, NVDA, Tesla. We'll take a look at several of those in just a couple of minutes. So this equity signal is really the MAG 7 plus 493, and the MAG 7 tend to dominate. So you can just check the delta notional here, minus 619 for the S&P 500 equity signal, and minus 528 for the MAG 7 signal. And just like the S&P 500 or the S&P 500 again, just like MAG 7, setting up a very nice divergent short right here, 937, 938, as traders continue to take negative delta options positions. Then a brief reversal higher. All right, so pretty similar setup for NASDAQ to the S&P 500. Index signal showing the turn, and then a divergent signal in the MAG 7 signal here. Zoom out. And not quite as clear the level of support and resistance, but that level had active support, then resistance in the overnight trade, and definitely was a nice entry point for a short just a couple of minutes after the cash open. And a quick target right back down to the 619 level that had acted as support earlier. All right, so that's NASDAQ. So I thought pretty clean setups with clear resistance levels and price target support levels in both the S&P 500 ES and NQ futures. All right, let's take a look at some stocks, unless there are any questions about the indexes. All right, I've got several stocks I want to take a look at. Overall, though, I thought the options trading in the stocks that I normally look at was pretty light today. So let's pick out a few. That stand out. And first of all, let's take a look at Meta. Pretty narrow, choppy range for Meta today. Let's see what options traders are doing. I'm going to shift to puts and calls. Go to Meta. Let's zoom in on this. All right, so the key for Meta, and this is going to be the case for several of these stocks today, is support and resistance at key levels. So the key for Meta here today was the resistance at the put wall right after the open, and again right around 945, 944, something like that. And this is also somewhat of a call peak pattern here. Setting up a short right around 943, 44. Or also resistance at the 600 level just after the cash open. So let's go back to Bookmap. Now I'll go to Meta. Zoom in on this. By the way, Meta at a $650 stock is not the most liquid in the world. But anyway, 600 entry point for a short just after the cash open, and then a cleaner entry right around 944. Though the heat map in Bookmap shows a history of limit orders in the order book, there's a limit sell orders that came in just after the cash open. Looks like a little bit were consumed at that first test, and it looks like all were consumed on the second test right around 945. Setting up that short. Ways to play that: sell a call spread, buy a put spread, or just sell shares. So key for Meta today, I thought, was the reaction at the 660 level. All right, next stock. Let's take a look at Microsoft. Let's see what options traders are doing. Zoom in on this. Another pretty choppy hero signal today. Again, key reaction at the Spotgamma level, the 485 hedge wall, acting as support just after the cash open for a very strong bullish opening drive. And there were some call buyers coming in. But the put buyers started to spoil the party, and then call buyers became call sellers. So the orange line shows calls, blue line shows puts. And here, in this case of a stock, market makers are hedging. They take the opposite side of traders' trades, and they hedge their delta exposure by buying and selling shares of stock. So Microsoft, a reversal higher at the 485 hedge wall just after the open, and then it looks like as traders started selling calls and buying puts, Microsoft reversed down and right back down to the 485 level in a much slower move down than up. All right, so that's Microsoft key. There's the 485. 485 hedge wall, and then somewhat of a double top here at the 4888 level. And the limit sell orders in the order book. Right back down to 485. All right, that's Microsoft. Next stock, NVIDIA. Actually, a pretty slow day in NVIDIA. Let's take a look. So let's see what options traders have been doing in NVIDIA. So you can see the put line is pretty flat. So it's mainly call sellers driving price lower, setting up this divergent short. That should look familiar. It is that pattern is the pattern that we saw in the MAG 7 signal and the S&P 500 equity signal. And NVIDIA is, of course, one of the largest components of the MAG 7, actually the stock with the highest market cap at one time at $5 trillion. All right, so nice divergent short. Reversal as traders were selling calls. Let's zoom in on this just a little bit. Traders selling calls from the open, and then price reverses lower just a few minutes later, setting up again a very nice divergent short. Let's zoom in. Let me bump up the volume dots just a little bit. So you can see as the price is moving higher, all the magenta volume dots, falling cumulative volume delta, and nice breakdown as traders continue to sell calls. And traders continued to sell shares as well. And target down here at the 186 high liquidity level. All right, so that's the NVIDIA short. Zoom back out. All right, so that's NVIDIA. Next stock, Tesla. All right, Tesla, key level in play is the 467 hedge wall. I don't have that shown on this chart. I did draw a horizontal line here at the 467.50 hedge wall that did act as resistance earlier today, and the price has now broken down below that level. All right, so let's see what options traders are doing in Tesla. All right, so just like NVIDIA, traders are selling calls from the open. Initially, the blue line, the put line, was pretty flat. Traders selling calls. Traders selling calls from the open. Tesla breaks down below the 467.50 hedge wall. Finds resistance at that level. And then reverses lower right around 945 as traders were selling calls, shown by the falling orange line, a little bit late, but selling calls nonetheless. Also started buying puts. All right, so that's Tesla. And a divergent short at the open or another short right around somewhere between 945 and 950. All right, back to Bookmap. All right, so there's that first short at the 467.50 hedge wall. I just drew a red line there. Let's see what options traders and traders are doing now. So now Tesla heading back down toward lows of the day. Limit buy orders at 462, 61, and 60. So let's go back to Hero, see what options traders are doing now. All right, so they started selling calls again and buying puts. That's shown by the following orange and blue lines. Traders take the opposite side of the market makers take the opposite side of those trades, and they have to sell shares of stock to hedge their delta exposure. All right, that's Tesla, and I've got a couple more. First of all, AMD. AMD having a strong day today, unlike NVIDIA, which is not. So this is a bullish opening drive. A break above the 210 hedge wall. Then it looks like it took a few tries, but a break through the 212.50 hedge wall. All right, bullish opening drive. A little bit delayed. Call buyers came in about 5 or 6 minutes after they opened. And so we're watching levels as key support and resistance levels. All right, so let's go to Bookmap. Go to AMD. All right, so here's the 210 put wall support level and the 212.50 hedge wall. I just drew a red line there. So now AMD back up to the highs of the day, right around 215. Looks like these limit sell orders at 215 came in just after that test, first test right after the cash open. So AMD having a bullish day today. As options traders buy calls and sell puts. All right, next stock, MU, Micron, very strong today. Very clear bullish opening drive. Traders buying calls, selling puts. Call buyers really dominating. That's shown by the rising orange line. And Micron continues to grind higher. So let's take a look at Bookmap. Bullish opening print. A lot of aggressive buyers right at the open. Bit of a pullback to VWAP. A couple pullbacks to VWAP. Now price is broken up firmly above VWAP. And also the limit sell orders at 290 were consumed. All right, so that's Micron, continues to grind higher. Let's go back and see what options traders are doing. So traders continue to buy calls. Looks like a few put buyers have come in now. That's shown by the following blue line. All right, does anyone have any stocks they want me to take a look at? All right, I'm going to shift back to total. Let's go back to the S&P 500. All right, so it looks like SPX is trading again just above its 68.95 volatility trigger. And the index signal starting to turn higher again. Equity signal still moving lower. Let's go check Bookmap. Go back to ES. So most recent price action. Support right around the SPY 686 round number level. Then resistance at VWAP. And currently support at SPY 687. Just above the 68.95 volatility trigger. All right, let's go check trace now. We'll zoom out just a little bit. So SPX still trading in negative gamma, red shading. Let's check charm pressure. Let's zoom in just a little bit. All right, so charm is showing red selling pressure and blue buying support. So SPX in a zone of selling pressure, and potential targets would be I'm looking for blue support below, red selling pressure up above. All right, now is the S&P 500 Hero Index signal turning up pretty sharply. Let's go check in Bookmap. Aggressive buyers coming out at ES. As ES SPX SPY find support at the SPY 687 round number level. Note also in the order book here, limit buy orders just below the level. Let's check NASDAQ. All right, questions, comments? Anyone have any stocks they want me to take a look at? I'd be glad to do that. All right, NASDAQ trading just above the QQQ 620 volatility trigger level, but still below the lower daily expected move for NQ. All right, back to ES. All right, backed up to the ES, lower daily expected move. Let's see if it can break through that level. And the S&P 500 index signal continues to move higher. Hero signal continues to move higher. Check next expiry again. So interesting that some of this is long-term bullish. Not all 0 DTE. That was shown by the teal line. So let's take a look at that again. So teal line is showing options that expire today. That is 0 DTE. It's actually showing next expiry. And for the S&P 500 index components, that would be options that expire today, since the SPX, SPY, and ES all have options that expire every day. So showing a little bit of longer term bullishness. Let's go back to Gamma. SPX still trading just above the 68.95 volatility trigger in this lower part of the negative gamma band, or negative gamma region. All right, ES breaking above its lower daily expected move. And currently above the 68.95 volatility trigger at 6,900 level. And by the way, Spotgamma's line in the sand for bear to bull is 68.90. So just 5 points below the volatility trigger. So in Spotgamma's point of view, S&P 500 is still in bullish territory. And by the way, let's take a look at, let's go to Trace. See if I can zoom in a little bit. What was looking like a potential end of year target earlier at 7,000. Maybe a little bit of stretch today with SPX trading 100 points lower. So that is the short call strike of the JP Morgan collar that expires at the end of the year, end of the quarter, end of the month, and end of the year at 7,000. And it looks like, unless there's a huge rally in the next couple of days, that short call will expire worthless. And JP Morgan will roll that short call and long put spread to March, end of month quarterly expiration. So 7,000 was looking like a very strong target just a few weeks ago, or just last week maybe, but maybe not so much since there's only 2 days left. But that's also the call wall and the absolute gamma strike. All right, ES grinding higher. Last call for questions, stocks. We'll check NASDAQ. So NASDAQ is stuck below its lower daily expected move. And ES has just broken above its lower daily expected move. Quick last look at Hero. S&P 500 index signal continues to move higher now. And S&P 500 equity signal also turning higher. but still on an overall downtrend. S&P 500 index signal looking a lot stronger today. All right, everyone, just a quick reminder. The FOMC minutes come out a day early. That's tomorrow, Tuesday at 2 p.m. Jobless claims also a day early, 8:30 a.m. on Wednesday. Jobs report will not be released this Friday, but next Friday. And we'll go over it and we'll wrap up the year on Wednesday. So I want to thank you for watching, and I hope to see you on Wednesday. All right, everyone, thanks again. Have a great afternoon, and I will see you on Wednesday. Bye.